Hi guys, me again. Just thought I wanted to touch base re alcoholism, addiction, that bugbear on the back, the monkey on the back. I've been thinking a lot about the Adrian Chiles documentary, Drinkers Are Like Me. You know, it's all the things that were thrown up by that, how difficult it is to define an alcoholic, the difficult ways in which to say, you know, you are definitively, you know, drinking too much versus just maybe having a heavy period in your life, you know, with drink. So, you know, it's very hard. I mean, if it was easy, we'd all be able to just kind of go, all right, I'm this, do this, and that will resolve it. But I was kind of struck by how Alcoholics Anonymous was curiously absent from the documentary the other day. And something someone else was saying to, I think, Nadia this week, they were talking about, you know, is the anonymity thing around Alcoholics Anonymous necessarily a good thing? Initially, when I went into recovery, I had a very positive experience of AA. AA was a way to help me sort of stop the rattling and the sort of helter-skelter washing machine tumble dryer thinking that goes on in your head. And I remember someone in rehab saying a very good thing to me. A lot of people obviously are in denial about their drinking problem. I mean, in a weird way, having thought about the Adrian Chiles documentary a lot since it went out, you could argue that the entire documentary was a documentary about his denial. Because despite clearly drinking too much and having a problem with alcohol, when he got to the end, you know, nothing really was going to change other than he was going to try yet another form of managing how much alcohol he took in. And yet, it sort of led me to think, you know, when I went into rehab, I remember someone saying to me, look, you're saying that you know the right way to manage your drinking. You know the right way to manage your life and structure it in a way that, you know, works for you. Well, if by listening to your own brain, all that's happened is it's led you to this madhouse or this rehab center, in what ways is listening to your own brain working for you? You know, and that kind of led me to think, yeah, that's true. You know, we can all get very indignant, and we do get very indignant. And in fact, it's part of the definition of denial, that you get very protective and you get very sort of hostile at the thought that what you might be doing, that, okay, it might be a bit excessive, but actually, I'm not an alcoholic or I'm not an addict. And so you get very protective. So we have a vested interest in not admitting it, because it's almost like at the very point you admit it, is that all I become? And that's something I really worry about sometimes with me and Nadia, is that we do a lot of these films and we do a lot of discussions, and you know, potentially you go on Loose Women and talk about it. I know Nadia talks about it, and you know, the danger is that all you become is, oh, you're that guy who's married to that woman who's an alcoholic, and you deal with it really well, and it's really nice to hear you talking about it. And of course, the difficulty is that all you are in your head? And so to the alcoholic, it's kind of like, all right, I don't want to be just thought of as just the person who's kind of a very successful recovering alcoholic. So what am I trying to say? I think when people admit to having a problem with alcohol, I think to admit that you're an alcoholic is a massive deal. It's a massive moment of, and this is where I think the fear of admitting it and saying it has come from. It is that, you know, if you say you're an alcoholic, you are marked for life. And that's that. And I think this is a bit of the problem with Alcoholics Anonymous. I think AA, although it's worked a great deal for me over the years, and, you know, certainly in the early days of my recovery, it was, you know, I met some important people that helped me go to more meetings. It allowed me to stop that tumble dryer thinking, as I said. And yet, I began to feel quite early on in going to those meetings that there was a sort of rigidity to the way in which I could get better. It's like it had to be this way, or it had to be the 12 steps, or you had to do this. And if you didn't, there was a sense, I'm not saying it was absolutely the case, but there was a sense that you weren't recovering perfectly. So for example, if I go to a meeting now, I'll often say I'm 14 years sober, haven't been to a meeting in a couple of years, and people will often come up to me afterwards and say, oh, you know, that's you're calling a relapse if you do that. You're courting a relapse if you don't go to enough meetings. And I know what they're kind of saying. What they are saying is you are courting a relapse if you're not mindful at all times of the fact that you have a, you know, bad relationship with alcohol, and you also have perhaps a tendency to think alcoholically, and I've talked about that a lot. You can think alcoholically without picking up a drink. I mean, I think a lot of people, you know, there's the phrase white knuckling it. You know, I think so many people are white knuckling it, even with, you know, just drinking on a Friday or just drinking on a Saturday and a Sunday. That's white knuckling. White knuckling is gripping on for dear life and putting in forms of control that are difficult to maintain. And that might be not drinking on this holiday, or not drink Stoptober. I won't drink in October. I mean, the amount of people who are unbearably bad-tempered in October who are white knuckling, you know. So, you know, you can think alcoholically. But I do think that, you know, the whole thing around Alcoholics Anonymous, and I think this is one of the major problems with it, as this person was saying to Nadia this week, is the anonymity thing. I understand totally that when you go in, you need to be anonymous, but the idea of maintaining your own anonymity, for example, me not being able to talk about, or not being able to say that I go to it, or not being able to share in my own experiences of Alcoholics Anonymous, I do feel stigmatizes it. I do think that some of these 12-step programs can stigmatize and control something that's already stigmatized. So it kind of, you're struggling for freedom. I do remember someone many years ago saying, I don't only want to think of myself as someone who's ill. I don't only want to think of myself as someone who's an alcoholic first and everything else after. And sometimes there's a feeling that, you know, I'm Mark, hi, my name's Mark and I'm an alcoholic. You know, why can't I say, hi, my name's Mark and I'm a filmmaker and a writer and a husband and a father and a son, and I'm an alcoholic and I'm an addict. I'm also a great runner. I also can take brilliant photographs. I can also dance. You know, it does sort of narrow cast your understanding of yourself. And so the reason I stopped going to as many AA meetings as I used to, and I barely go to any at all now, probably one every 3 or 4 weeks when I feel acutely like I need a space to sit in and have a little bit of quiet, is that I don't only want to be understood in those terms. There is a sort of pall, a P-A-L-L, pall of depression around some of those meetings. And I don't kind of always want to be reminded of it. And yet at the same time, you know, I recognize that I need to be in touch with it, and I need to be plugged in somehow into managing myself and looking after myself to avoid the alcoholic thinking. Anyway, I just wanted to share thoughts on whether anonymity, Alcoholics Anonymous, whether the word anonymous is a good thing or a bad thing. What do you think? Do you think anonymity is key? Do you think anonymity is everything it's cracked up to be? Share below.